First of all, let me just say, General Breedlove, the Supreme Allied Commander has to be one of the greatest titles I've ever seen in my life. That's one, you must have a very impressive LinkedIn account as people went on there and looked at that. And your business.
Direct link to God, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, that's a heck of a title. But anyway, we obviously appreciate your service. We thank you both for being here. I want to begin by asking you, I think one of the things that maybe is missing in our analysis of this, and I think you both hinted at it in your opening statements, is how to view all of this. I don't think we understand enough in our debates about Russia how much this is about domestic politics within Russia itself. And so I wanted to share with you my view, which I think others share as well, and kind of get your sense of whether I'm on the right track so that we can then analyze any proposed grand bargain with Russia through the lens of that. You know, the old deal that Putin seemed to have with his society was that he would create a system where people could make a lot of money, especially the elites, if he had total political control. And it seems like the new model now is that he is basically trying to generate popular support by creating this perception that he has restored Russia to great global power status on par with that of the United States. And in that process, understanding the tools he has available to do that. He can't do that economically. They're the 12th largest economy in the world, so they're not insignificant. I think it would shock a lot of people to learn that the Russian GDP is equal to that of Italy's. They also don't have tremendous soft power. And so largely, what has given him influence in the world and allowed him to kind of position himself the way he has internally especially, is their willingness to use the assets they do have, conventional military capabilities, the nuclear threat, the use of cyber tools, and to use them in brutal ways often, certainly indiscriminately. And I think through the lens of that, goal is how you begin to understand Ukraine, where now they hold on to Crimea. There's all this talk about NATO and assimilation with the West has vanished. You look at Syria, where their engagement basically shifted the entire dynamic. They are now positioned themselves in the eyes of the Russian people, many in the world, as a regional power broker, which is in fact an alternative to the United States. I think that's how you view some of the actions that occurred in our elections, not to mention the opportunity to go back and say to the people in Russia, the American Republic is a fraud, it's a scam, it's corrupt, it's no more superior than anything else, it's all hypocritical. You see it often, of course, in the crackdown of what's happening internally in Russia, where people who oppose Vladimir Putin wind up in jail, convicted, as we saw yesterday, on trumped-up charges, or poisoned in a hospital bed in intensive care and dead. And of course, the military buildup for a country that's suffering dramatically economically, they continue to expand their military capabilities while the rest of the economy. And I guess it leaves Vladimir Putin at this moment in a position, and maybe this is an exaggeration, I don't think it is, I think he has more power amassed in his hands than we have ever seen in Moscow since the death of Stalin, in terms of the control that he has over that government and of that society. And so that's why I view, and I want to have your opinion on this, I think both of you have talked about it, why I think this whole notion of a grand bargain where they're going to help us kill terrorists and fight ISIS in exchange for lifting sanctions is a fantasy. For starters, I think it's borderline immoral, because it basically views the Ukraine situation as a bargaining chip to be used as part of a broader deal, in essence, an asset that we can give away in exchange for something broader, which I don't think the Ukrainians are going to go for to begin with, and I don't think there's support for in Ukraine. But let's talk about fighting against ISIS. That's what Putin says he's doing now. Obviously, why would we have to cut a deal to get him to do what he claims to already be doing? The other risk at that, of course, is the way he claims to fight terrorists is by bombing civilian populations. So if we are in partnership with him fighting ISIS and he kills a bunch of children and bombs a hospital in Aleppo, that's on us too, because we are in partnership with them. So imagine the impact that would have on us. And then what about the price we would have to pay? I think, and I just wrote some things I think he would insist on, he would want us to recognize a sphere of influence in the former Soviet republics, obviously give up on everything that has to do with Ukraine, get NATO off his border, lift the sanctions. And I say all this, why is it a fantasy? Because I don't think there's any internal pressure in Russia on Vladimir Putin to cut a deal. First of all, you can't pressure him because you die. And if you tried to, there's no media. So we're going to try to cut a deal with a guy who thinks he's winning, has no internal pressure, and wants us to give up everything in exchange for him doing what he claims to be doing anyway. So maybe I'm a little harsh, but I think that's a really stupid deal. What do you think?
That's a yes or no answer.
Agreed. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, the grand bargain mythology is really getting a bit laughable at this point. I mean, let's be clear. You said, Senator, President Putin is claiming that he's combating ISIL. He says that, you're right, but I think you and I, everyone here, we know they're not combating ISIL. 80% of the strikes that they're undertaking in Syria are in areas where the Islamic State isn't even present. So let's not kid ourselves. And then think about the assets they bring to bear. So they would bring what? They'd bring air? I mean, we don't need air in Syria or Iraq. So I truly appreciate what you're trying to say, and I agree with you 100% that the list of things that we could potentially give Russia is huge, top of the list lifting sanctions, and the list of things that we get in return is really a big fat zero in many ways in terms of how I look at it. And thank you for mentioning the situation at home. He is leading a declining power. It doesn't feel that way based on the investments that he's made in his military and the way he's acting, but he is at threat at some point of losing control of the situation, and I think because of that, he creates this constant narrative, Russia as victim, he's the only one upholding Russian values. It all borders on the ridiculous, but the situation at home is very important, and that's why I'm so glad you raised it, to mention, to understand his calculus and why he needs to be out in the world to then create this narrative at home that serves his interests in terms of staying in power.
Senator, I would just, again, I agree. Thank you for talking about how he's fashioning his view of Russia and Russia's view of him. I would just add one thought. I think also central to the way he does this is creating a common enemy and demonizing the United States as a leader in the West, and how we do business is clearly a part of that calculus that you walk through. I would say this just a little different way, and I've been saying it for some time now, and that is, we currently have no trust in this relationship with Russia, as was described and as many of you described. There is no trust. You cannot surge trust. You have to earn it over time. If we're to begin to have agreements with Russia, I think we need to start in smaller, more meaningful ways where we can demonstrate that both sides are earnest in their approach and that our results are objective and can be viewed by the world, not argued by TASS versus CNN or whatever. And if we build trust over time, then we can find ourselves in a place where possibly we could have these conversations. But I don't think you go from 0 to 120 miles an hour. We do this incrementally.